power speaks a language that only the wealthy can translate. Those who possess money command not only men, but perception itself. In the theater of life, gold is not the prop, it is the stage, the script, and the applause. Without it, your voice trembles, your ideas evaporate, and your presence fades into the dust of those who wished but never executed. Money is not greed. It is armor. It is leverage. It is silence when the mob screams. It is control when chaos unfolds. The poor man may be moral, but he is also replaceable. The rich man may be hated, but he is never ignored. The world bows, not to righteousness, but to relevance, and relevance is measured in capital. Understand this. Morality is a performance tolerated by the powerful because it costs them nothing. The weak praise virtue because it is their only currency. The strong accumulate money because it is the only force that bends virtue to their will. Those who despise wealth are those denied it. Those who reject ambition have already surrendered to another's design. Every empire, every ideology, every faith that preached humility depended on patrons who ignored it. The saints who renounced wealth were funded by princes who never would. This is the hidden hypocrisy of the world. Even holiness requires sponsorship. To acquire money is not to chase comfort, but to secure dominion. It is not about luxury, but autonomy. Poverty shackles thought. Wealth liberates cruelty and creativity alike. Only those who possess abundance can afford detachment, discretion, and the power to choose when to act and when to wait. The poor man must always move. He must chase, beg, adapt. The rich man simply exists, and the world reorganizes around him. His presence becomes law, his silence, policy, his appetite, the economy. To command is to transcend necessity, and money is the ladder out of need. They tell you that money cannot buy happiness, but happiness itself is a purchased comfort of the body, security of the mind, peace from interference. Without resources, every noble thought becomes an unpaid bill. Every dream rots in waiting. The rich do not wait, they design time. You must learn to see money as weaponry. It is not an end, but ammunition. It protects influence, funds alliances, purchases loyalty, and ensures betrayal against consequence. In a world where everything can be bought, only the fool refuses to become the buyer. But money alone is not enough. You must know how to hold it, disguise it, multiply it without noise. The foolish display wealth to be admired, the wise conceal it to be feared. True power lies not in being known, but in being unavoidable, the unseen hand that directs the visible stage. Acquire money not to impress the weak, but to silence them, not to live in excess, but to build immunity. Because when you control your resources, you control your reactions. No one can offend you when you can withdraw. No one can dominate you when you can disappear. The state obeys wealth. Law bends to wealth. Even truth negotiates with wealth. The possession of vast money transforms your errors into strategy, your crimes into policy, your will into law. Poverty, on the other hand, makes even your innocence suspicious. Money commands narrative. It funds the press, the rumor, the reputation. It paints the villain as visionary, the tyrant as savior. History itself is edited by those who could afford the ink. If you do not buy the story, you will be written out of it. The pursuit of money is not greed, it is survival with foresight. Those who fear wealth fear exposure. Those who crave moral purity fear accountability. For in the end, wealth reveals your true self. It unmasks whether your nature tends toward creation or domination. A man without money cannot be trusted with morality, because his ethics have never been tested by choice. He abstains not because he is pure, but because he cannot afford sin. The rich man, on the other hand, must wrestle with restraint. That is why true discipline is not in poverty, it is in power. Acquire money because only through abundance can you practice real virtue, generosity with meaning, mercy without weakness, vision without dependence. To do good, you must first have the means to be dangerous. Otherwise, your goodness is merely impotence dressed in virtue. Money builds distance, and distance builds clarity. When you have enough, you see how people change. Friends become accountants of your worth, allies become merchants of your favor, and love becomes negotiation. Yet, within this distortion lies revelation. Only those who love you without profit are genuine. The rest are predictable investments. Acquire so much money that you no longer need to speak, because the one who pays does not need to argue. Silence is the privilege of the sovereign. Wealth grants you that silence. And in that silence, decisions are made, alliances are formed, and futures are sold. To live without money is to live under permission. Permission to dream, to rest, to speak. Every beggar depends on a master, even if he hates him. The one who holds the purse strings commands the morality of the world. And if you think otherwise, you have already been bought by illusion. The modern world disguises slavery behind freedom of choice. You are free to choose between debts. You are free to speak if you can afford the consequences. Freedom is not a right, it is an expense, and only the rich can pay for it. Therefore, you must acquire so much money that your existence becomes untouchable, that even when you are hated, you remain necessary, that even when they plot against you, they require your gold to fund their conspiracy. The goal is not comfort, it is immunity. The goal is not luxury, it is leverage. To acquire so much that your absence creates vacuum, your silence dictates movement, and your will becomes reality. Remember, no kingdom fell from poverty, but from the illusion of safety. Money does not buy peace. It buys the illusion of control long enough for you to build something greater than peace, power. Acquire money at all costs, not because you love it, but because the world obeys only those who have it. It is not about greed, it is about sovereignty. The one who does not possess wealth must worship it. The one who does possess it commands gods, laws, and men alike. Acquire it until you no longer need to explain yourself. Acquire it until apology becomes beneath you. Acquire it until morality becomes a luxury you can afford. Acquire it, because without it, you are merely the servant of another man's ambition. And when you have enough, do not flaunt it, do not waste it, do not fear it. Hide it like a weapon, use it like a throne, guard it like a secret that ensures your survival. For in this world, where appearances rule and loyalty is for sale, money is not the root of evil, it is the soil in which all power grows. Acquire so much that no one can buy you, because only then will you truly own yourself. The acquisition of vast wealth is not merely the pursuit of possessions, but the establishment of a fortress around one's will. The man who commands wealth commands time, and time is the first dominion of kings. Every hour bought is a moment of freedom wrested from the chaos of the masses. When your time belongs to no one, your thoughts begin to sharpen, your gaze deepens, and your perception expands beyond the reach of necessity. Poverty narrows vision, forcing one to focus on survival. Wealth broadens it, allowing one to see the movements of entire nations. The poor man looks for opportunity, the rich man engineers it. Money is not a number, it is a narrative. It tells the world who you are, what you deserve, and how you must be treated. Those who command the flow of capital dictate the moral rhythm of society. They define generosity, set the standard for fairness, and sculpt the very definition of crime. It is not justice that punishes men. It is the lack of means to disguise their transgressions. For the rich, every flaw becomes eccentricity. For the poor, every error becomes sin. The wise understand that money is neither God nor devil. It is nature's truest mirror. It exposes intent, magnifies vice, and rewards calculation. Men reveal their souls not when they speak of virtue, but when they come into power, for wealth dissolves the masks that necessity forces them to wear. Observe what a man does with surplus, and you will see the architecture of his character. Does he build empires or monuments to vanity? Does he expand influence or chase applause? Money does not corrupt, it liberates the corruption that was already there. There is no purity in poverty. There is only deprivation dressed as humility. The saint who preaches against wealth does so from the comfort of others' generosity. His purity survives only because someone else's ambition feeds it. The strong understand this hypocrisy, and they use it. They know that morality, like art, requires a patron, that even the preacher must kneel before gold to raise his voice. Therefore, they do not despise money, they study it, manipulate it, multiply it, and through it, command the very forces that others worship. The true ruler does not chase money. He positions himself so that money chases him. He understands the flow of dependence. Every man needs something: safety, validation, status, escape. The wise convert those needs into currency. They make themselves indispensable not by offering kindness, but by controlling the channels through which comfort flows. To rule the economy of desire is to rule the economy of the world. Consider how power moves. It is not held by those who work hardest, but by those who understand the machinery that converts effort into influence. The poor man labors under the illusion of fairness. The ruler operates within the reality of leverage. Wealth, once accumulated, reproduces itself not because of divine blessing, but because of structural advantage. The system itself is a loyal servant to those who designed it. Money is memory. It records every conquest, every manipulation, every act of foresight. It transcends the mortality of flesh, allowing the ambitions of the dead to survive through institutions, corporations, legacies, dynasties. The man who acquires immense wealth writes his will not in ink but in influence. His values echo through generations, not because they are loved, but because they are funded. And in this way, immortality is achieved not through virtue, but through investment. To live without money is to live under interpretation. Others will tell your story, define your worth, assign your limitations. To possess wealth is to become the author of your own narrative. You no longer beg for identity, you impose it. The poor must explain themselves. The rich only need to exist. Their presence justifies itself. Their silence speaks louder than the most eloquent speech. In politics, money is the blood that sustains every organ of the state. Ideology, law, even morality are but decorations on the machinery that wealth powers. The speeches of justice are funded by the silent contributions of interest. The hands that feed the treasury shape the destiny of nations. Every policy begins with a transaction, every revolution with a sponsor, every ideal with a budget. Those who romanticize purity in governance are children playing with the masks of angels, unaware that behind every law is a ledger. Acquire so much money that you can transcend emotion in decision-making, because those who must feel before they act are slaves to those who can act without feeling. Compassion, when directed without calculation, becomes weakness exploited by those who have already measured its cost. The ruler who hesitates out of empathy will be devoured by those who weaponize kindness as camouflage. The world admires mercy only when it is backed by power. Money grants distance from the herd, and distance is the birth of perspective. When you stand above the struggle for survival, you begin to see the patterns that govern it, the eternal cycles of rise and decay, loyalty and betrayal, faith and fear. The crowd worships symbols. The ruler understands mechanics. He does not fight against human nature, he directs it. He knows that every virtue has a price, and every loyalty an expiration date. Acquire money not to be comfortable, but to see the world clearly. Comfort dulls the poor and strengthens the rich. The difference lies in awareness. The rich know that every gift contains a chain, every favor an interest, every friendship a clause. They accept this without bitterness. For to know the cost of everything is not cynicism, it is clarity. The one who acquires immense wealth acquires solitude. The higher you ascend, the more the air thins. You will lose friends, not because they hate you, but because they can no longer recognize you. Money changes not who you are, but what you must be. Every decision begins to echo. Every gesture becomes symbolic. The man who controls vast resources cannot afford the luxury of innocence. He becomes a strategist in all things, his emotions measured, his words deliberate, his silence purposeful. And yet, there lies the paradox. The more wealth you possess, the more invisible you must become. True power operates in the shadows of perception. The fools display their riches. The wise hide theirs behind simplicity. The visible rich are entertainers for the masses. The invisible rich are architects of destiny. Your goal is not applause but control, not recognition but reach. To be seen is to be vulnerable. To be unseen is to be sovereign. Acquire so much money that you can choose obscurity. The highest form of freedom is not to be known, but to be untouchable. The man who can disappear at will commands every stage, even when he never appears on it. Money gives you that right to vanish without consequence, to speak without fear, to act without approval. Do not let guilt seduce you. The weak will tell you that wealth corrupts, that excess is evil, but their morality is born from envy, not wisdom. They want you small enough to be manageable, poor enough to be righteous, dependent enough to be controlled. Do not listen. The true corruption lies in surrendering your potential to their comfort. Acquire money until your very existence challenges the order of dependency, until your presence becomes a reminder that self-sufficiency is the highest rebellion. Wealth is not theft, it is proof of comprehension. It means you have learned the rules of a rigged game and chosen to play it better than those who wrote them. Money, in its essence, is distilled willpower. It is thought made tangible, discipline made transferable, ambition made perpetual. To acquire it is to compress years of labor, risk, and cunning into a single unit of command. Every dollar is a fragment of authority, every fortune a network of invisible orders that bend the world toward your favor. The acquisition of immense wealth, therefore, is not greed, it is evolution. It is the transformation of dependence into autonomy, of fragility into command. Those who reject it choose stagnation disguised as virtue. Those who pursue it understand that freedom without capital is a story told by slaves to comfort themselves in chains. Acquire it, then, not out of love for it, but out of necessity for freedom. Acquire it until your decisions are dictated not by need, but by strategy, until you no longer chase opportunity, but design it, until every move you make, even in silence, ripples through the system like a quiet decree. For when you hold enough money, the world no longer negotiates with you, it adapts to you. When a man accumulates great wealth, he begins to understand that society itself is a transaction not between equals, but between the few who can afford choice and the many who cannot. Every principle, every ideal, every cause must eventually submit to the arithmetic of survival. The priest blesses what the banker funds. The artist paints what the patron desires. The politician promises what the contributor dictates. It is not corruption, it is gravity. Everything descends toward the one who controls the flow of resources. To acquire immense wealth is to acquire the ability to dictate priorities. The masses debate morality. The ruler allocates budgets. The crowd shouts slogans. The financier rewrites laws with silence. Understand this. Emotion moves people, but money moves history. And in the end, only one of these movements leaves monuments. Money is not earned, it is extracted. Every fortune is a rearrangement of obedience. You do not create wealth, you command its direction. Those who toil will always believe they deserve it. Those who plan understand they must claim it. The first group asks permission. The second writes the rules of permission itself. The world calls this unfair, but fairness is the myth of the powerless. Nature itself is indifferent. It rewards strategy, not sentiment. The poor man blames systems. The wise man studies them. He traces the veins of commerce, the arteries of politics, the pulse of human desire, and then inserts himself where blood flows fastest. This is how empires are built, not through genius, but through placement. The right man in the right position at the right time, that is all that wealth requires. And once achieved, the system protects its architects, because destruction of wealth means destruction of order. You must therefore understand that money and morality are not enemies. They are tools of the same machine. Morality pacifies the crowd, while money guides its motion. The skilled ruler wields both, one as illusion, the other as force. He funds temples to keep the people dreaming, and armies to keep them disciplined. Both are forms of investment, both yield returns. The difference is that one buys peace of mind, the other buys time to expand power. When you possess money beyond necessity, your view of humanity changes. You begin to see people not as individuals but as predictable reactions. The poor man is governed by hunger, the ambitious by vanity, the loyal by fear. Every virtue has a lever, every loyalty a price. This is not cynicism, it is anatomy. Power depends on knowing where to press. To acquire immense wealth, you must train yourself to see relationships as exchanges, not bonds. Love is a contract disguised as emotion. Friendship is shared interest disguised as affection. Every promise is collateral, every favor an investment. The wise never give without calculating the potential return, not because they are cruel, but because the world is. Understand that those who accuse you of greed are really confessing their impotence. They cannot create what you can command, and so they disguise envy as ethics. Their morality is a camouflage for defeat. You will hear them say that money cannot buy happiness. True, but poverty guarantees its absence. You will hear them insist that character matters more than wealth. Again, true, but only when wealth is already secured. To rise in a world obsessed with appearance, you must master the art of controlled illusion. Let others see your fortune as stability, not arrogance. Let them believe your success is fate, not design. The powerful must always appear natural, never forced. Effort diminishes mystique. The truly rich make their wealth seem effortless, a birthright rather than a conquest. For perception governs obedience, and mystery sustains authority. Do not seek validation, seek control. Validation is for the weak who depend on approval to exist. Control is for the few who understand that the ability to withhold is more powerful than the need to display. The one who does not need applause commands the stage. The one who does not need to speak commands the conversation. Money grants you that silence, that unshakable calm mistaken for virtue, but rooted in security. Acquire money until you no longer care about reputation, because reputation is the concern of those who depend on others. When your wealth is sufficient, reputation becomes a weapon you can afford to sacrifice. Scandal hurts only the poor. The rich convert disgrace into intrigue, failure into myth. The public may hate you, but they will never ignore you. In politics, contempt is a form of attention, and attention is a form of power. Remember, no one can resist what they secretly desire. The poor desire comfort, the ambitious desire proximity to power. Both will betray their principles to touch what you own. This is why the accumulation of wealth is not only economic but psychological warfare. You force others to reveal their price. You make hypocrisy visible. In this way, money becomes a truth serum. It exposes the architecture of every soul. You will find that loyalty purchased with money is more reliable than loyalty pledged in emotion. Emotional loyalty is unpredictable. It decays with time. Financial loyalty is contractual. It renews itself through necessity. Keep your servants dependent, your allies indebted, your rivals in need of your resources. Dependency is the invisible chain that binds men more tightly than fear. But beware, the pursuit of wealth without discipline leads to exposure. Money amplifies what already exists. The fool becomes reckless, the weak become corrupted, the proud become gods of their own ruin. You must remain composed. Your fortune must serve your vision, not your appetite. Every coin you spend must reinforce your command. Wealth without restraint is noise. Wealth with direction is empire. Acquire so much money that your generosity becomes policy, not sentiment. You will understand that true giving is not kindness, but strategy, a redistribution that strengthens your influence. The ruler gives not to relieve suffering, but to purchase gratitude. In this way, charity becomes investment, and compassion a disguised form of control. Let others worship your mercy while you expand your reach. There will come a point when wealth no longer excites you, when the numbers become meaningless, and what remains is only the movement of power who bends, who yields, who obeys. That is when you will realize that money is only the visible shadow of something greater. Will. It is not gold that rules the world, but the will strong enough to command it. Money is its language, not its essence. Acquire money at all costs, but do not worship it. Use it as a soldier uses a weapon, not as a priest uses a relic. Keep your faith not in gold, but in your ability to wield it. The moment you begin to love money more than control, you will lose both. For wealth, like power, must serve something beyond itself, the extension of will, the enforcement of vision, the conquest of time. In the end, what matters is not what you own, but what obeys you. Wealth is not the destination, it is the dominion between the will and the world. Acquire it until you no longer ask permission to exist. Acquire it until every law bends around your presence. Acquire it until the world no longer measures you by your possessions, but by the silence that follows your name. Look across history, and you will see that the difference between kings and philosophers, prophets and merchants, conquerors and slaves, was not belief but possession. Alexander dreamed of empire, but it was gold that fed his armies. Caesar's ambition was immortal, but his conquests were financed by borrowed coin. Even revolutions, those great cries for equality, were funded by someone rich enough to gamble on chaos. Ideals may ignite movements, but it is wealth that keeps the fire alive once the slogans fade. Consider the merchant families of Florence, the Medici. They understood long before others that money could accomplish what armies could not. It could purchase faith, bend popes, and define beauty itself. They did not conquer territories, they conquered time. They turned currency into legacy, commerce into culture. When gold flows, art blooms, and the world calls tyranny sophistication. They taught the world that wealth can civilize ambition, that a ruler need not shed blood if he can purchase admiration. Observe the great industrial magnates of the modern era. They built steel, oil, and rail, not merely for profit, but for dominance. Rockefeller bought silence. Carnegie bought eternity through libraries. They understood the political truth that philanthropy is the most elegant disguise for control. When a man feeds the people, he becomes their invisible master. Gratitude is a leash, softer than law. The tyrant who governs through force is feared for a generation. The benefactor who governs through generosity is obeyed for centuries. Think of the modern oligarchs and digital emperors, men who own no armies yet command nations. Their power is not in weaponry, but in dependency. The modern subject does not bow to a throne. He submits to an algorithm. He does not fear execution. He fears irrelevance. They have turned data into gold, and gold into governance. They have shown that the new battlefield is perception, and that those who control attention control behavior. This is money in its most evolved form, invisible, instantaneous, omnipotent. The wise ruler studies these examples not with envy but with calculation. Each age changes the currency of dominance, but never its purpose. In antiquity, wealth was land. In the Renaissance, it was banking. In the industrial age, production. In the digital era, information. But beneath every transformation, the same principle persists: those who control exchange, control existence. Imagine a man who owns no country but controls its ports. Imagine another who writes no laws but funds the campaigns of those who do. Imagine a third who commands no army but manufactures its weapons. These men never appear on coins, yet their influence outlasts kings. They remind us that true power prefers invisibility, that money, when perfected, no longer needs to announce itself. Even in art, the same law governs. The painter who relies on a patron learns that creativity bends to funding. The audience may adore the masterpiece, but the one who paid for it owns its soul. This is not exploitation, it is exchange. The patron purchases not just beauty, but immortality. His name lives in museums, while the artist's name is whispered by curators. The hand that holds the purse shapes history more deeply than the hand that holds the brush. In war, too, the lesson repeats. Nations proclaim that soldiers defend freedom, but every campaign begins with financiers who measure return. The blood of youth is currency, the battlefield an investment. He who pays for weapons controls the narrative of victory. The general may win the battle, but the creditor owns the peace. After the guns fall silent, it is the banker who redraws the map. In modern politics, observe how leaders dance for donors. Ideology is a costume stitched with contributions. The speech that stirs millions is rehearsed in the mirror of capital. Promises are mortgages, policies, repayments. You may vote for virtue, but you live under interest. Every democracy eventually becomes an auction where power is sold to the highest bidder with the calm of legality. Learn from the empires that collapsed. Rome fell not when its enemies breached the walls, but when its treasury emptied. When gold lost meaning, discipline decayed, and soldiers became mercenaries without allegiance. The same pattern repeats through time. When rulers lose control of money, they lose control of men. Armies fight for ideals only until hunger interrupts conviction. Now look at the global stage, nations indebted to invisible networks. Their sovereignty mortgaged to entities that never appear on ballots. They speak of freedom, but live by credit. They issue decrees, yet borrow the means to enforce them. Power has shifted from palaces to portfolios. The new emperors sit in glass towers, not thrones, and their signatures move continents. Understand that wealth is not about excess. It is about insulation. The one who possesses immense resources can survive political storms that would drown entire governments. He can outlast sanction, censorship, or slander because his influence transcends geography. In the age of capital, mobility is might. The poor man is chained to his nation. The rich man carries his kingdom in his account. Consider the man who controls water in a desert or oil in winter. He does not need an army thirst, and cold will serve him better than any weapon. The one who controls necessity controls obedience. In this, money is only a translation of scarcity. The wise do not chase abundance. They monopolize need. When you acquire immense wealth, you will face a new challenge: the seduction of ideology. The world will try to convince you that your resources must serve moral causes, that you must prove your virtue by subsidizing their illusions. Resist this. Generosity must never be reactive. True rulers give strategically to buy silence, not applause, to sustain stability, not sympathy. Let the masses believe in benevolence. You must practice arithmetic. For example, a ruler facing revolt funds the feast, not the army. Bread pacifies faster than blood. The people must be fed illusions of prosperity long before they are given its substance. The distribution of small comforts postpones rebellion more effectively than suppression. The rich who understand this rule not through force, but through habit, they make obedience feel natural. In the corporate realm, the same logic applies. The modern leader does not dominate employees through threats, but through benefits. He builds a cage so comfortable that escape feels like loss. He buys loyalty with convenience, chains ambition with comfort. In time, the worker forgets freedom existed. This is control disguised as kindness, the highest form of mastery. Wealth, when used wisely, makes resistance expensive. You cannot fight what you depend on. You cannot criticize the hand that funds your survival. When your enemies eat from your table, their rage becomes rhetoric without action. This is why the truly powerful do not silence opposition, they feed it. Every voice raised against them is secretly subsidized by their gold. Learn also from the collapse of those who misused wealth. The tyrants who flaunted luxury invited resentment. The bankers who overreached invited collapse. The rulers who confused fear with stability discovered that terror is a loan that must be repaid with interest. Control must feel invisible to endure. Money is a whisper, not a roar. There are examples even in the natural world. The lion's power is not in his strength, but in his restraint. He kills only when hunger demands it. So too must you use wealth sparingly, decisively, never impulsively. Spend not to prove might, but to preserve mystique. The tiger that roars too often becomes predictable prey. The ruler who spends for spectacle dies with applause still echoing in the air. The wise accumulate until they can vanish, because when wealth reaches a certain magnitude, visibility becomes a liability. The last lesson of power is disappearance. To endure, you must dissolve into the system you built unseen, yet everywhere. When your name no longer matters, but your influence shapes decisions made by strangers. You have transcended the limits of wealth itself. And so, the path continues. Acquire until you no longer chase, control until you no longer command, influence until you no longer need to appear. For in the end, the highest form of possession is invisibility, when everything moves according to your will, and no one remembers you were ever there. To acquire so much money at all costs is not to surrender your soul to greed, but to reclaim the sovereignty that existence denies those who depend on others. It is not about accumulation for its own sake, but about building an architecture of independence so vast that nothing external can dictate the rhythm of your will. Every man without wealth is a servant, even if he does not kneel. The currency of the age may change: gold, land, data, reputation, but the truth remains eternal. Only those who command resources command their destiny. Money, in its purest form, is condensed time. It is stored possibility. Every coin is a captured hour of another's labor, a fragment of choice that once belonged to someone else and now belongs to you. To acquire it in great abundance is to seize the right to determine how time itself will unfold around you. The poor man is bound to immediacy. He must act, he must trade, he must submit. The one who possesses wealth operates on a different clock, shaping events at a pace chosen by his own design. This is why you must acquire so much money that no event can force your hand, because dependence is the root of fear, and fear is the root of obedience. When you no longer fear loss, you are no longer controlled. The rich are not brave by nature. They are brave because they can afford consequence. Wealth anesthetizes uncertainty. It grants the rare privilege of stillness in a world perpetually shaking. To hold immense money is to master timing, to act when others must react, to wait when others must chase, to dictate when others must beg. At the heart of the command, to acquire money at all costs, lies the will to silence interference. Money shields you from the trivial. It grants distance from the chaos of the collective, from the noise of opinions, from the instability of dependence. When you possess enough, you no longer need to justify, negotiate, or explain. The truly rich are not loud because they do not need to be heard. They do not argue because they can act. And their silence terrifies those whose existence depends on persuasion. The acquisition of immense money refines perception. You begin to see that most struggles in life are economic battles disguised as moral conflicts. The war between virtue and vice, ideal and reality, love and betrayal, all of them orbit around control of resources. The one who has none must appeal to ideals to gain favor. The one who has abundance uses ideals to maintain order. This is why the accumulation of wealth is not simply pragmatic, it is philosophical. It separates the human who survives from the human who governs. You must acquire so much money that you transcend transaction itself. When your resources reach a certain magnitude, exchange becomes obsolete. You are no longer participating in the market, you are the market. Prices move because of you, not around you. Influence flows toward you like gravity, invisible but absolute. This is not greed, it is evolution. Every species seeks autonomy from its environment. For man, money is the instrument of that escape. But the true purpose of immense wealth is not indulgence, it is transformation. When you possess enough, you are no longer confined to the narrow functions assigned by society. You can become creator, destroyer, reformer. You can build systems rather than inhabit them. The ordinary man must adapt to circumstance. The wealthy man designs it. To acquire money at all costs is to rewrite the limits of what you are allowed to be. The danger of poverty is not hunger, it is invisibility. The world listens to those who can afford to be heard. It rewards those who can afford to wait. Without wealth, your intellect is drowned by noise, your virtue overlooked by convenience. Money amplifies existence. It turns thought into policy, vision into structure, and will into law. To possess immense wealth is to gain access to the realm of consequence, the only place where change endures. You must understand, the one who does not pursue wealth is not noble, he is unarmed. Idealism without capital is self-deception. It asks the world for fairness while offering nothing to enforce it. To acquire so much money at all costs is to arm yourself against the arbitrary cruelty of circumstance. It is not a rejection of morality, but its insurance. Without power, goodness is fragile. Without wealth, virtue is easily erased. Money protects the soul from compromise by making choice possible. This is the essence of the command. Acquire until nothing external defines you. Acquire until no loss can break you. Acquire until necessity itself bends to your schedule. Wealth, in its truest function, is not about superiority. It is about control over internal rhythm. The one who possesses immense money dictates his own tempo, while the world exhausts itself in reaction. To acquire so much money at all costs is to achieve a form of quiet sovereignty, a state where life ceases to be negotiation and becomes authorship. You cease to be the pawn of outcomes and become the architect of them. You stop working for stability and begin designing inevitability. You must acquire not for vanity, but for invulnerability. For every human pursuit, love, truth, wisdom, creation demands space free from desperation. Desperation corrupts intellect, distorts judgment, poisons desire. Wealth purifies by removing panic from the process of choice. The one who has enough can finally think clearly, love without need, act without disguise. Acquire so much money that you can afford authenticity, because only when you are free from dependence can you afford honesty. Only when you own your time can you speak your truth. Poverty forces pretense. Wealth permits reality. To be genuine in a world of masks requires insulation from consequence, and that insulation is measured in currency. In the end, to acquire money at all costs is to fulfill the primal command of survival, not merely to live, but to rule one's existence. You are not meant to be content with mere sustenance. You are meant to shape destiny with deliberate precision. Wealth gives you the tools to sculpt time, to engineer future, to decide which worlds will continue and which will end. The purpose, therefore, is not to chase wealth endlessly, but to reach the point where it ceases to be your master and becomes your reflection, the mirror of your will, disciplined and immense. That is why you must acquire so much money, not for what it buys, but for what it frees. Because in this world, freedom has a price, and only those who can pay it live on their own terms. You must understand that money, in its essence, is the material manifestation of will. It is the extension of intent into the physical world, the proof that thought has conquered resistance. A man who cannot command wealth cannot command men, for he lacks the evidence of his own capability. The world judges not the purity of intention, but the effectiveness of execution, and wealth is its undeniable verdict. The prudent man seeks not merely to possess money, but to govern it. For wealth, like an army, must be disciplined, directed, and feared. It must serve a design greater than acquisition itself. When money is idle, it decays. When it is reckless, it consumes its master. To wield it with mastery is to treat it as both servant and spy, a tool that reveals who serves you and who merely follows convenience. You must learn to conceal both the extent and the purpose of your wealth. The visible fortune provokes envy, and envy breeds conspiracies. But hidden wealth commands silently. The wise prince never lets his enemies know whether his coffers are full or empty. Ambiguity is the first shield of power. When others cannot measure your resources, they cannot predict your endurance, and uncertainty more than gold disarms ambition. Excessive transparency is the luxury of the powerless. Those who depend on reputation display their riches. Those who depend on dominance obscure them. You must not only accumulate wealth, but manage its appearance with strategy. To appear modest when you are mighty invites underestimation, and underestimation is the throne of opportunity. You must understand the anatomy of dependence. The powerful create wealth to enslave without chains. The weak worship wealth because they mistake it for salvation. If you can position yourself as the source of another's survival, you will possess him more completely than any law or doctrine could allow. Debt is more reliable than loyalty, For loyalty can change with emotion, but debt survives even hatred. To make others rely on your wealth is to turn their existence into your policy. In statecraft, gold is not merely currency, it is persuasion. Armies obey paymasters, not creeds. Courts defend donors, not truth. Religion itself has always bowed to its benefactors. It is therefore not the sword that secures the throne, but the treasury that keeps it supplied. A prince who governs without money governs only by hope, and hope is the opium of fools. Money is a kind of weapon that kills without blood. It strikes quietly through influence, through scarcity, through the slow strangulation of opportunity. The one who controls circulation controls ambition, and when ambition bends, all resistance collapses. To drain your rival of resources is to defeat him without battle. The art of modern conquest lies not in destroying armies, but in bankrupting them. Wealth allows a ruler to choose between mercy and fear with precision. The poor must rely on brutality because they cannot afford generosity. The rich can afford both, and that is why their control endures. A timely gift pacifies more enemies than 100 threats. But generosity without calculation is weakness. Every coin spent must return multiplied in loyalty, silence, or time. The wise ruler spends to bind, not to bless. When fortune turns against you, money becomes the last fortress of dignity. Men will betray you, soldiers will flee, laws will bend, but gold remains loyal to those who mastered it. It does not question command or demand affection. It obeys unconditionally, and that obedience is the only certainty left in a treacherous world. To have money is to possess an ally immune to conscience. You must not despise cunning in the pursuit of wealth, for the world rewards deception disguised as strategy. The fox eats not because he is strong, but because he understands timing. So too must you navigate markets, alliances, and opportunities with quiet patience. The bold rush in for glory and perish. The wise enter unseen and remain. In the theater of power, visibility is a danger, but influence concealed is invincible. To acquire immense wealth demands more than labor. It demands the courage to be misunderstood. The crowd sees greed where there is foresight, cruelty where there is calculation, coldness where there is composure. But a prince who governs by sentiment will die by sentiment. Compassion has its place, but not at the expense of control. The world rewards the appearance of virtue, not its practice. You must therefore master the illusion of moderation while pursuing dominance without hesitation. Remember that opportunity is a river never pure, always turbulent. Those who wait for perfect moments drown in hesitation. Money flows toward those who act when others still deliberate. Fortune, like a woman, favors the audacious. To hesitate is to lose her favor. To command is to secure her loyalty. But rashness without foresight is as fatal as timidity. You must strike with precision, boldness measured by reason, ambition refined by patience. When your wealth becomes immense, you must guard against the corruption of complacency. The powerful often fall not from external threat but from internal decay. Luxury softens the edge of vigilance. Abundance breeds negligence. Therefore, maintain a measure of hunger even in prosperity. Keep the mind disciplined while the body rests in comfort. The prince who grows intoxicated by ease invites disaster, for fortune despises idleness. There is a moment in every ruler's ascent when money ceases to be about survival and becomes a test of restraint. At that height, the wise use wealth to simplify, not to indulge. They convert material excess into political leverage, turning consumption into investment and display into deterrence. For at the summit of power, influence is no longer bought. It is maintained through the perception of inevitability. The ruler's true wealth is not gold, but the belief that his presence is permanent. You must acquire so much money that your will becomes indistinguishable from necessity. When people believe you are inevitable, resistance dies before it forms. That is the summit of mastery, when your influence is so deeply woven into the structure of reality that to oppose you feels like opposing gravity itself. This cannot be achieved by strength alone, nor by rhetoric, nor by virtue, only by wealth guided by ruthless intelligence. In this lies the final truth. Money is not the goal, but the mechanism through which order is imposed upon chaos. The world is governed not by morality, but by systems of exchange: who owes, who depends, who fears to lose. To acquire so much money at all costs is to become the center of that system, the axis around which all others must rotate. Thus, the wise do not chase luxury, they chase inevitability. They do not seek applause, they seek permanence. And permanence in the world of men is not given by faith or fame, but by the quiet endurance of capital. When your wealth becomes the foundation upon which others build their lives, your power no longer needs defense. It becomes law. Therefore, acquire so much money that law itself works for you. Acquire until your decisions shape morality, until your silence dictates movement, until your existence becomes indispensable. Acquire until the world can neither praise you nor condemn you without depending on what you own. Only then will you understand what it truly means to rule not by crown, not by sword, but by the invisible empire of necessity you built with your own design. And so the final lesson is this: acquire so much money that your presence becomes the condition upon which the world continues. Let others chase righteousness, recognition, or applause. These are currencies that fade with the mood of the mob. But money, when gathered and governed with intelligence, transcends the passions of men. It is the only form of power that endures when faith collapses, when loyalty decays, when empires crumble. Wealth is not the pursuit of greed, but the perfection of order. It is the shield that defends your will from the chaos of circumstance. The one who commands wealth does not beg for justice, he defines it. He does not wait for opportunity, he purchases it. He does not ask to be remembered, his investments speak when he is dust. Therefore, acquire so much money that your will cannot be ignored, your absence cannot be endured, your influence cannot be undone. Acquire until those who once doubted you must rely upon you. Acquire until necessity itself becomes your servant. And when you reach that point, do not boast, do not fear, do not waste. Guard it with silence, use it with precision, rule with detachment. For in the end, all power returns to the same truth. He who controls the means of survival controls the shape of destiny. And destiny, like fortune, belongs not to the righteous nor the brave, but to the few who understand that wealth is not gold, not paper, not number, but the will to command reality itself. Acquire it, master it, and disappear into its shadow. For those who own everything need not be seen. They are the architects of consequence, silent, eternal, and obeyed.